You've got questions, we've got answers. Welcome to the Therapist Question Box, where trauma-trained therapists tackle real questions from real people. I'm your host, Lindsay, bringing you grounded insights you can actually use, brought to you by Therapy Utah. Welcome back to another episode of the Therapist Question Box. We are here to answer your tough mental health questions, so ask away. Today I have with me Whitney Evans. Whitney, thanks for joining us.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
Always fun to have you here. And today we're going to be talking about trauma. We're going to talk about trauma and how it shows up, why it shows up, and we'll just dive into that listener question. The question is, can trauma show up years later, even if I have felt fine for a long time? Mm-hmm. Yes or no? Can trauma show up years later?
Yes, a resounding yes.
Resounding yes.
Yes. And not only is it possible, it's common.
It's common. Mm-hmm. So why is that? Why is it that someone can be fine for a really long time and then all of a sudden, here it is again?
Yeah. Well, there's some different reasons why that can be the case. One of the reasons could be the individual does live a fairly well-functioning life, and oftentimes that person has a really strong, high-functioning part that knows how to just show up and get her done, keep one step moving ahead of the next. And that's actually a really common coping strategy with trauma, just staying one step ahead of the pain, of the fear, of the negative images and sensations that come with trauma. That's one reason. And a reason we might see that show up later on, oftentimes maybe there's an activating event, a life event that happens that's maybe different to or similar to previous trauma that opens up that place of pain, and it can be hard to ignore it, even though one maybe has ignored it for oftentimes a long time, years, decades.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. So there's an activating event, and then people are just one step ahead of the pain. So tell me what happens when, they're not one step ahead of the pain. If they've been one step ahead of the pain, what would cause somebody to not be ahead of the pain?
Yeah. Where something happens, again, it might be an activating event. It may just be aging. It could be a life change. Something occurs that's different enough that maybe interrupts that functioning from previously. And we'll start to see that with different symptoms. Oftentimes we see that suddenly I'm having a hard time sleeping at night, either falling asleep or I'm waking up and struggling to go back to sleep. Oftentimes we'll see that in changes in eating patterns. We can see that in relationship dysfunction can start to show up. We'll see anxious symptoms, right? Panic attacks, my heart's beating often, my stomach hurts more than it used to.
So what I'm hearing is a lot of body things. Like your body will tell you when there is something off.
Your body will tell you, your relationships will tell you, your daily functioning will tell you. If you start noticing it's hard to get up and get into work, maybe you're dropping the ball, so to speak, with some of your responsibilities and commitments at work or at home, those things do a really good job of highlighting where trauma may be working to get our attention.
That makes a lot of sense. So pay attention.
Yeah.
Right? When that shows up. The hard thing is, though, okay, I paid attention, and now what? All right, so this trauma from how many years ago shows up.
Yeah.
What do I do?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We've got a lot of options. Sometimes we're able to just manage it on our own. Sometimes an individual can identify something that they can change or tweak in their life just on their own, or maybe they've got someone in their life that they trust that they're talking to about this awareness or these symptoms that are coming up. And sometimes we can find ways to cope. Sometimes it's healthy, sometimes it's not healthy, those ways to cope. Sometimes we need a little bit of extra help. That would be a reason to maybe wonder, do I need a little bit higher level of care? Do I need to maybe talk to a professional if suddenly I'm struggling to maintain my regular day-to-day functioning in relationships and in the things that are important to me.
Okay. So I think that's really important. What you just said is, am I struggling in my day-to-day? Like has something shifted enough that my day-to-day experiences have changed?
Yeah.
And then I know, okay, I need to do something about this. Good. Okay. I think that's helpful. People can try on their own, but when they recognize their day-to-day is off, something's going on, that's when we need to seek professional help.
Talk to somebody.
Yeah. So here's a question that I think is interesting is, if trauma can come out later on, why do some people sometimes seem fine at first? Like some big traumatic event happens and they actually seem like they're doing okay. And then years later, my brother will say it comes out sideways. And I really think that's a good way to look at it. It comes out sideways. Why doesn't it come out sideways right at the beginning?
Right at the beginning.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of that speaks to our ability as human beings to survive. Oftentimes, trauma, whether it's a big T trauma, the things we usually think about when we're talking trauma, war, death, accident, assault, abuse, those kinds of things, or a series of little T traumas, things that are more chronic, perhaps, that we're experiencing in our lives, that the cumulative effect can be traumatic.
So we survive.
We
is what you're
survive.
saying.
We need to survive. And different parts of us will figure out strategies to survive.
Okay.
And these parts get really good at their job. So, for example, somebody experiences a devastating car accident. There may be a part that develops that gets really good at maybe a couple of different things, either avoiding being in a car, driving in a car. Perhaps that part there's a part that maybe dissociates, meaning kind of shuts the system down while in a car. Right? Their mind, their body goes somewhere else to survive being in that scary place again. There's a lot of different strategies that parts of us figure out how to cope and survive.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting? I think you could look at that and say, let's say years later, somebody has a hard time getting in a car or they get nervous, when they're driving or whatever it is. And you could look at them and just say, what is wrong? Why do they keep doing this? It's ridiculous. Like, you're safe and it's fine and you have your seatbelt on or whatever.
Yeah.
But when you look at it from that lens, I think it provides so much compassion. Yeah. Like, oh, this is an adaptive response to a traumatic situation. Yeah. And opposed to saying, gosh, what is wrong with this person?
You, right? You must be weak. What's wrong with you? No, not at all. That is a part that is working to adapt and to survive.
Yeah. One of the books that I work on with my students that I teach from is What Happened to You, and by Bruce Perry and Oprah Winfrey. And that is the message, is instead of just looking at the behavior, we look and say, wait a minute, what actually happened to you? And then we can actually say, oh, this is an adaptive response to a traumatic event, an overwhelmed nervous system. Yep. And this, congratulations, look at you surviving, thriving.
And look at how you discover compassion in that place. Instead of hating that part that does that potentially unhelpful job, we can actually love that part and have compassion for the protective role that it's taken on.
That's right. Yep. I think it totally shifts. I mean, it's a complete different paradigm shift when you think of it that way. Instead of, again, something's wrong with me or this person. Oh, no, this was the adaptive response. And I think congratulations. Look, your body's actually making sense of chaos.
And it's working the way that it was built to work.
That's right.
That is the whole purpose of particular parts of our brain and our nervous system, is to get our attention.
That's right. But this is what's amazing. Again, I think sometimes we don't see that at all. We just think, oh, we got to get rid of this part. Yep. I gotta not feel that way, and I got to feel better, instead of saying, wait a minute, this is exactly, it's doing a job and it's trying to protect me. Yeah. And when I can look at it that way, right? If our listener can look at it this way, it just changes the paradigm around it. It's really beautiful,
Yeah.
actually.
Yep.
Yeah. So let's talk about what healing might look like. So this resurfaces for whatever reason. There's an activating event. Something happens in a person's life where all of a sudden, oh, this is resurging again. Let's talk about what healing, like what healing is possible years later.
Yeah.
Is it possible?
It is possible. And one of the first things that is important to do with trauma is to acknowledge it and then to face it. We need to actually be exposed to that trauma where we can look at it, face it, allow whatever feelings and thoughts happen in our minds and in our bodies, and then offer options for healing in the face of that trauma. So it really does first start by facing it, acknowledging it. Oftentimes in a therapeutic setting, that can look like really imagining the scene again, looking at the image of the traumatic moment, the traumatic event.
Okay, let's stop right there. Because I think a listener that is hearing that and hearing you say, okay, you can bring up that event again, look at the scene. That sounds horrible to most people.
It is scary. So maybe let's back it up just a little bit. Before we even look at that scene, we're going to create some resources for that individual.
So explain to our listeners what a resource is when you think of it.
So for example, a container. That's a really common resource that I encourage my clients to create. And it's a visual image that they create in their mind, in their heart, a place that is safe, a place that provides comfort, a place that provides literal space to put the hard things, a place that might provide organization for the hard things. Sometimes we put things in our container that don't get to be by other things. There needs to be some separation. That can be really helpful to give a sense of containment, because oftentimes we worry that if we look at the hard traumatic thing that it's going to take over and that we're going to end up in chaos and we're overwhelmed and out of control. But having a container provides a sense of safety. It also provides a sense of pacing. We don't have to look at every single thing all at once. The container can hold on to a lot of it, and we'll just look at it in bits and pieces, because that exposure piece is so critical to healing. But we can do that in bits and pieces.
Okay.
Oftentimes we help our clients create what we call a safe, calm place. Again, a visual image of a place that either they've been to before or that they create new from scratch, a place where they can imagine being safe, protected, taken care of, where there are provisions, whatever those provisions might be in that place. That can give an individual's system some reassurance and a sense of safety to then be able to look at the hard thing.
When I've done my own trauma work, the calm, safe space, when you say that, right? I think of my own calm, safe space. And it's interesting because I used it when I was doing my own trauma work, but I now use it as a resource in my everyday life. Like it's just an image and a felt sense of, calm and peace and safety. And I think that's an important thing to remember, is that we're doing these resourcing, right? Visualizations in our own mind before we're bringing up any of these activating events, these traumatic events.
We have to put some safety and some boundaries and some borders around it. Otherwise, it can feel like a potential free-for-all, and that's scary. That's why our protective parts keep it at bay in the first place.
That's right.
And keep us oftentimes in denial.
And I would also say that having a therapeutic relationship with a therapist that you feel can hold space for the heavy thing that you're talking about, that they're not going to start crying and you're going to have to comfort them,
then help them,
right,
and make them feel better,
right?
Oh, for sure.
But that they can handle it, and that you trust them to hold this experience. You know, I think we've all had the experience where we've said something that was meaningful or a big thing for us, and people just kind of brush it aside, and you go, "Wow, never again. Not doing that. That was too big, too hard, too heavy to have been brushed aside like that." So I think having that relationship with a therapist you trust is also part of that resourcing to make sure that relationship is there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So excellent. So and you talked about bringing it up. What kind of what kind of things do you do when you say bring up that traumatic event? What would that look like? Like if a client, if a listener were to come and become a client and do a therapy session, what would that look like?
Yeah. Well, first we're going to start by just hearing a little bit about their story, a little bit about their history. What's been going on? What have they been experiencing? What have they noticed change or look or feel different in their lives? We just start out first with story. Everybody's story matters.
And we all relate to story.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. And we start there. And as clinicians, as experts, we can see some things that oftentimes are similar in different people's stories that can lead us back to or give us clues to potential trauma that needs looking at. And so again, as that therapeutic relationship builds and strengthens, then we can start asking more questions, maybe get curious about what else might be there. Oftentimes the client comes in and they know exactly what they're looking at. They know exactly what they're coming in to talk about and to face and to feel. So it depends.
But other times the therapists were also a detective, right?
A little bit. I ask that question
together.
often. Is it okay if I just act like a bit of a little parts detective?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, again, the client doesn't know what's actually going on. They know what the feeling is, but really understanding.
Sometimes they don't know what's underneath that feeling.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's the job of a therapist, to help them uncover that and to really do some investigation around that to understand.
And for us to help them do it in a helpful pace where we're not going so fast that they feel overwhelmed and flooded and shut down, understandably so, but also that they're not going so slow that they're not noticing some change and some healing and some difference in their life. We want to kind of find that sweet spot. And that's part of our job as therapists, is helping them find that sweet spot.
Yes. And understanding what that is. I think that's really important that you said that it's a sweet spot. It's challenging, but there are some shifts and some changes that are happening, because this work is hard. Yeah. It's not for the faint of heart, right? But when you can start seeing, oh, there's some shifts happening. I feel better. My relationships seem like there's some shifting. Then you can go, okay, it's worth that hard work, because I can see the fruits of this labor. They're paying off.
You bet. Yeah. I love that. The fruits of the labor. So true. Yeah. And those can be so sweet.
Yeah,
but
sure.
It comes after work.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Whitney, thank you so much for being here. I want to just go through a few of the things that you talked about, which is that often our trauma comes out later because we're just one step ahead of the pain, right? That we manage, and it's a survival tactic that our brain does, our brilliant, beautiful brain does, to keep us alive, right? And to be grateful for that. Like, that's actually a survival mechanism, that these parts show up and manage this really heavy, hard thing that we have gone through, right? But often it's that activating event that might happen, and to pay attention to our bodies, and then our relationships. Something happened, something changed, something shifted, and to pay attention. Wait a minute, is there something that's coming up for me, right? Those are the questions to ask. I really appreciated the steps that you said. Acknowledge it. We have to acknowledge it and face it. And then, okay, what are the options, right? How can we get curious about it? And then what are options for trauma treatment? And again, the reminder that it's not just everything, we're taking every piece of clothing out of the closet.
Nope, not
but
at all.
We're saying, nope, we're going to do this in a way that feels safe to everybody, and it's not going to be overwhelming to your system. And part of that is providing resources, right? The calm, safe space, doing some containment exercises so the brain does not become flooded, and that the clients are not walking out just feeling like they're going to be in a puddle on the ground.
All at loose ends. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I love that. Well, thank you. I think trauma is something that we're hearing a lot about. It's something that so many have experienced. And so really the willingness to say, oh, let's talk about what happened to you, right? Let's talk about what happened to you, not why you're behaving the way you did or are, but what happened? Tell us about your story. There's so much healing just in that piece alone, and understanding that. So thank you so much, Whitney.
You bet.
Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. And until next time, take care. That's a wrap for today on the Therapist Question Box. I'm Lindsay Schiss. Thanks for listening. And remember, every question you ask is an opportunity to learn and grow. Brought to you by Therapy Utah.
Hey, this is Kathy Kinghorn. I'm an owner at Therapy Utah. If you'd like to book with one of our trauma-trained therapists, go to www.therapyutah.org. Thanks for listening.